virtual tour. So you're the first one on the list. So I'm pretty happy to have you there. So yeah, how are you doing first?
Good, man. I did see I was the first on the list, so I'm excited to start it off.
Yeah, you're opening, so it's pretty cool. So yeah, the idea, like, I'm gonna present a bit what's the topic and the way we're gonna work together. So the idea of this interview is really that it's just like a simple interview where I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions about how you've been running and scaling consulting organizations and around sales, which is like something we don't hear too often. So that's gonna be really about that. And for people who are listening, you can ask questions at any time. We're going to keep some time at the end if there's any question. But yeah, that's how it's going to be. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about yourself. Who are you?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually based on the East Coast of the United States in Atlanta. Actually started off my sales career in startup world, SaaS startup world.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I did recruiting before that for a very short stint out of college, but then SaaS startup world. From there, went into a pretty long tenure with Salesforce. Really, just a good organization to grow in and get some mentorship and coaching and really start to harness the sales skill sets around a lot of really smart people.
Mm-hmm.
Got a little bit more interested in getting back into companies where I could go build stuff again. And so ventured out into the consulting and services world by way of recommendation from a mentor of mine who's a C-level in Salesforce, and did a 2.5-year stint at Blue Wolf, which is acquired by IBM, building out an enterprise practice for them in the Southeast here. And then after that, was recruited over to Seven Summits, where I'm at today, and to build out their entire East Coast practice, where we've got about 9 people under my management now, and doing about on track to do about 60 million in bookings this year. So kind of came from SaaS startup in SaaS and then into consulting and services, and it's been a fun and interesting ride. Learned a lot.
Okay, that's really cool to hear. Actually, it's so you spent like it's very surprising because most of the time people who are going into software try to tend and stay in software because it's a very specific way of selling, and going to consulting is often seen as like maybe it's often done on the other direction. You start by doing consulting and then you're doing tech. So why did you decide to actually go back to consulting basically?
Yeah, I think nowadays with how complex organizations are from an infrastructure perspective and understanding how those organizations buy, and there's so many different stakeholders now within businesses, um, you can't, how we sell software is evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really hard to find or understand how businesses move and tick and make decisions and all the downstream effects of technology and all the ingredients that go into creating business transformation at scale that actually works, and an organization benefits from that. And I don't think you get that in SaaS. I think it's really hard to find that experience. So I came into services because it was recommended that I go do that because I needed to go learn these things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really, really difficult transition at first. And it just shows you how much more difficult this world is, because there's so many more factors that create success versus SaaS. It's your technology, you're selling a platform, and
Mm-hmm.
it does these things. So I came this way because I think as you go up market, as you start to lead organizations, you learn a lot more here. You're not just selling, you're selling people, and you're selling an outcome. You're selling the visual, the experience to drive that outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like playing chess versus when I think you're in SaaS, you're playing with checkers a lot of times. And so it was, for me, it was to learn more. It was to increase my value up market, and hopefully at one point allow me to run organizations And I don't believe I would have gotten that if I would have stayed in SaaS. I don't think that the opportunities are there to learn those things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something I've actually learned by when I started my business. I started doing a bit of consulting, and like selling is one thing. So first I was setting myself crazy goals that are typical goals you see, you see in SaaS, where I say, okay, 10% month over month growth. And I was like, okay, and then I need to deliver these things, so it doesn't
Yep.
work. And then you have like tons of things that are just simply related to the size and the fact that it's based on humans. And the second one was like, it's very easy when you're selling consulting to find a problem, identify it, and there's kind of, let's say, conflict of interest, because if you want to maximize your contract and the duration you're going to work with the customer, you have to find a problem and become a part of it, basically. And as long as the problem stays, you're in business. And so that's why I found it's very tough, because often you have like also strategic consulting, you have implementation consulting, and a lot of time people don't really know exactly what they want to buy or what they need. And you always have this kind of thing where you're going to be doing slides and that's it. There's nothing that's going to happen. So how do you make sure like you're selling the right thing and you're getting the results you want?
Yeah, I mean, you said something that's interesting. This world is consulting is more difficult, but it's also sometimes more rewarding because you are delivering an outcome. And when you go and say, "This is how much I spent, and this is what I built," yeah, I think when you talk about SaaS, I always think tools like Calendly are really good examples because they sell themselves. You plug it in, there's no implementation, it just works, and it's high value from the beginning. Now you move into something like a Salesforce, right? You don't just deploy or turn on Salesforce and it works. And you have to, it is whatever you want it to be, but you have to manufacture it and create an experience with it that's going to drive the outcome. So for me, the rewarding part of services is being able to deliver that experience. And to your point, you can find a million problems. What we need to focus on here are what of those problems are obstacles to specific goals that organization wants to meet, and in what order do you do those things? Because you can chase a lot of money in consulting because there's problems everywhere and you can go grab it, but organizations don't have unlimited funds to spend. So you really have to be thoughtful in how what you're finding aligns to that organization's goal, which is why we always start with an outcome. And if that problem that you're finding relates to the outcome that organization is after, then you're on to something you can present what that would take to overcome that obstacle or hurdle, and take a chunk out of whatever that outcome is that you're after. Yeah. So it is more complex. I can go find a million problems worth millions of dollars, but we have to be really careful because we also have to deliver good work over and over again that aligns to a business goal to allow them to keep investing in us because we're obviously producing something for them.
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's like not starting with the outcome is a really bad thing, because you won't be able to really know what success or what success is not. And one thing I've observed is often people, they just like put money and they say, okay, now they kind of ask you something that are different from the scope, and it can be pretty challenging. But I found like working with problems and and outcomes is much better. And what I really love actually, and that's very in SaaS we don't see it too often, is whenever you are selling SaaS, people are talking about features, they are doing a demo, for example. And so they are always talking about their stuff. And consulting taught me really how to find problems. And then, then you can maybe find like a revenue stream, and potentially then you can find a product to solve that. But what I found is like working, just like consulting and building these problems first is always a great way. And I think it can be applied to SaaS, because when you go in SaaS now and you just get asking for a demo, it's just a nightmare. I just hate it. You have an SDR telling you about the thing and then just like trying to bunt you, and it's just horrible. So yeah, I think the problem first approach is really interesting in consulting, and we don't really see that a lot in SaaS.
And the problem is too, is it aligns to the sales methodologies that people are coaching on. When you go into any of these SaaS organizations, and they're all 99% of them are coaching on BANT or Challenger or Sandler.
Yeah.
And those things are all about finding a low-hanging fruit problem. What's the ROI of fixing that problem here? Do you want to buy this?
Mhm.
And I think one of the things we need to do better in SaaS, because the SaaS world has become so competitive. There's 100 solutions for every problem that I read a book that talked about, the delivery is the alpha omega of business development, and that is the alpha omega of selling. And from that initial customer touch point, if we take our sales hats off and we put our consulting hats on, and we're not selling anything, we are driving home a point of view, we're understanding, we're being thought leaders, we're injecting ideas. If we transform our selling, even in SaaS, I think we can do this, and I think we can do it at scale. If we transform that BANT methodology into more of a curiosity, thought leader type methodology, and then once we've proven the value in the concept, and we have those things in, put your sales hat on to go negotiate the deal. But I think far too often right now we're teaching these rapid sales cycles to fire them off, and in doing that we're also teaching bad selling mechanics. And I was built on bad mechanics, and I had to come over here and really get kicked in the mouth 10 times to learn that you can't sell like that everywhere you go, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't scale. I don't think, especially as you go up market and you get a lot of really, really smart people in a room. I mean, they see right through those things, and I think that is bound to fail.
Yeah. So you're talking about scale, and so how do you scale in consulting?
It's a broad question. What part?
So let's say I have there's tons of different consulting, but I work with a lot of customers that are, for example, consulting in cybersecurity, or it's a bit of a mix of implementation and strategy. And whenever they're selling, they need to just like sell consultant hours. So whenever they have a pool of hours, then they go and sell more. They need to hire more people or work more, and then they always have this problem where they are growing their workforce, and if they have a downturn, it's super hard to actually do anything. So how do you avoid that, basically?
Yeah, I think I'll talk about the space that I'm in, but I think that it's probably somewhat similar. In the Salesforce consulting world, the number of service providers or service partners has grown astronomically. I mean, it's in the hundreds of thousands of solo consultants and businesses at this point. And it used to be that you were just a partner that could kind of do anything, whatever that cloud was, or whatever that digital experience that someone's looking to drive. You could do anything under the sun. Where I think the world is going now, and you're also starting to see it in product development, is people are high centering on being really good at one or two things. And in Salesforce is a good example, because they're not going out and building all of these things that are competing in markets. They're going out and buying a best in breed product that has been really, really good in that market. And it's the same thing with the consulting world. Is we want to have a point of view and be really, really good in a subset of that market. And that allows us to distinguish ourselves, that we're not good at everything. We're great at something. And having that identity, I think, is the foundation to scaling an organization. And so 7 Summits has that identity. Then when you get in there, you use that foundation, I think, to start to expand into other things. But I think in order to get that growth and to own a market and have that, you have to have an identity of who you want to be and what you're good at. And then once you're in organizations, especially consulting organizations, you can start to push the walls a little bit on, this is really one of our core competencies, but we have the skill sets to do those things. Yeah. And I think the first thing consulting organizations do that is wrong is they don't find out what that is. They'll dabble in a little bit of everything, and then it's hard to market. It's hard to go out on social and brand who you are. So I think as a foundation, be great at something. Don't try to be good at everything. And I think it's easier to scale from there.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I've been running my business for a year, trying to jump on any problem I could, because it's very reassuring. You don't need to do much cold outreach. People come to you with a problem, and they are all kind of different. And then you're like, I can implement this. I can do training. I can do coaching. And then you realize you're average at everything. And then just people are okay with that, but you can't really prove any interesting outcome. It's always different. And so I think it's kind of like something we always know, but we never really are courageous enough to do. It's about nailing your niche. If you know exactly who you're serving, what problem you're solving, and what outcome can you repeat, then it works well. And then, as you said, expanding, on other things as you see opportunities. But yeah, that's something I've seen very often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so regarding the let's say the organization you recommend for consulting. So if you're selling, as you say, Salesforce consulting, for example, how will you organize things? Will it be inbound, outbound? Can you maybe tell us a bit more about how you typically organize a sales motion there?
Yeah. So we're an outbound organization, and we really have two markets. So we have a direct market where we're going outbound to customers, which is actually a very small subset of our outreach. The market that I helped build when we came in was a channel market, and that is going to Salesforce. So Salesforce obviously is running cycles for deals, and up market, there's always consulting partners involved in those deals. How do we get in front of them? And that's the believe it or not, that's the $1 million question: is how do we get Salesforce's attention? I spent 4 years there. I sold there. I know what they want. I knew what I wanted when I was selling there. So we have to go out and add value to those folks, and accelerate deals, find new business, grow their accounts, so that they'll come to us when they have opportunities and say, hey, I've got a great partner at Seven Summits who can deliver this experience for you. As we scale and grow, I mean, we're only at a little over 200 people at this point, but we've got to do that direct model and start to build out some infrastructure and a technology stack to support an outbound model going direct. But we all know that from marketing and sales perspective, it's not cheap to do that. It's people. It's a lot of manpower. It's a lot of marketing power to go out and go up market when you're going direct. So that's something that we're getting ready to work on. But I would say for majority right now, we're an outbound channel-driven enterprise level business.
Okay. So you mean like there's some deals that are coming through partners, and progressively you're trying to make sure you source your own deals and have this kind of outbound motion, right?
Yeah. So Salesforce is obviously the core, right? Because they're selling licensing deals, and when people buy licenses, we work on them. Once we're in with clients and we're doing consulting services for them, we can also extract new opportunities, and we can bring those back to Salesforce and say, hey, listen, we've got a new deal that we just sourced up for you guys. So that we can do that as well. But I would say majority of the time, the motion is we're working with Salesforce in a variety of different areas. They know who we are because we've done a really good job supporting them in other areas, or we've added value to their book of business. And then Salesforce might find an opportunity and they'll say, hey, I know a good partner that can work with you guys, Seven Summits, and they'll bring us into that opportunity.
Okay, I see. Okay. And so do you have like so you said you were building this kind of infrastructure in outbound infrastructure. So do you have like a separation like SDR, AE, CSM, or how does it work in there?
Yeah, so we don't. We have only AEs. Our delivery organization kind of also operates as our customer success organization, because they're typically delivering longer term transformational type projects. So they're there throughout the entire thing, making sure that project stays on the rails. We're any new ideas or problems that come up, they're solving for those as well. From a selling perspective, it's all on the AEs as of now, to do their own outbound. I have brought over some cadences and some things that I know from the SaaS world around, valued, consistent touch points. What is that messaging? How does it stick? And how do we do those things? But as of now, they do it all. And that's definitely a bandwidth issue, right? You can imagine that them prospecting, running cycles and closing deals, that's just a lot to do for a seller. So I think that's an area that we'll explore as we continue to grow, to start to create some operational layers that make those things more efficient.
Okay, I see. And so what about the handover process? So is it like you're gonna have an AE that is gonna go and prospect and do everything until closing, and then they hand over to delivery, or do they stay involved in the delivery of the of the solution and the value?
Yeah. So we have pre-sales teams
Mm-hmm.
that that are an accumulation of sales engineers, principal consultants. They're really smart people, right? Because the salespeople aren't necessarily the smart people. So when we have a deal starting to move, we'll bring in a group of pre-sales folks to help us with that motion and swarm around that deal, create proposals, and do all those things. When we sell that deal, that principal consultant actually moves with that deal over into delivery. So they'll be the executive sponsor of that delivery cycle. They've run the whole sales cycle with us, so they understand the client, they know the players, they know the scope of the work, and then they'll transition that work onto the delivery team, and then they'll really see that client for the life of that relationship.
Okay, okay, I see. And one issue, I've actually worked in a company. We were selling. We pretended we sold the software, but we were actually selling, just a service basically. And one thing we had is we had a handover where we were closing. Then you do like this kind of handover call, and then like the project managers or delivery managers are taking over. And the problem is these people were really focused on delivery and they had no sales skills at all. So they were either identifying like wrong upsell opportunities or they didn't see it. And it was always very tough to kind of like come back, and because we were basically like handing over, dropping the relationship and then coming back, and it sounded very, oh, the sales guy is here, is gonna say try and sell us something. So how do you prevent these kind of things?
Yeah, it's a $1 million question because we obviously want to grow those existing relationships, but at the same time, I also want to get more new logos
Mhm.
because we know that that's a huge metric of ensuring growth in services. So as of right now, a lot of that's still falling on our account executives. And then I would also say that our principal consultants are starting to get better around extracting opportunities that they're hearing about and delivering those back to sales so sales can run a cycle on it. We do have an organization of what we call client partners.
Mhm.
So for our top, call it 15 to 20 strategic accounts with very, very large projects going on with lots of growth potential, we will move those accounts into these client partners.
Mhm.
And these client partners, they're kind of like the tip of the spear from a skill set perspective in that, they're not as good at selling as maybe some of our AEs are, but they also understand delivery. They understand how to scope deals. So
Mhm.
they're a jack of all trades. We'll move those accounts over there so they can focus solely on growing those accounts. But for the other ones right now, it's a little bit of a tag team, if you will, on principal consultants, account executives, delivery executives to ensure that when we're hearing those conversations, backlogging work or new projects, that we're getting those back into the hands of our sellers to ensure that we're taking advantage of
Mhm.
those and capitalizing.
Okay. What kind of tools do you use to actually, because right now everyone's remote and communication is obviously, alignment is super important in these kind of things. So how are you solving this problem right now?
So we're actually a remote first organization, which was nice. So
Hmm.
when the pandemic hit, it wasn't a drastic change for us. We were already built for a remote world.
Hmm.
So as an organization, our delivery unit uses a lot of Slack. I would say the sales organization uses mostly Google Chats because it's just easier for us
Hmm.
to do it that way. We're obviously a Salesforce consulting partner, so we're heavy Salesforce users.
Hmm.
Um, and then we actually recently brought on Zoom Info, and it was a strategic investment for us because as we start to equip ourselves to go direct and start to go directly to clients,
Hmm.
there's a lot of incredible information inside of there. And it also just allows us to go out and find people within our existing client base if we want to go into different parts of organizations. It's teeing us up to take a bigger leap into penetrating our current relationships and then also being able to go into net new ones.
Okay, okay, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting also because I didn't know ZoomInfo could be used for current. I mean, it can be used on anyone and any account, but that's actually a pretty smart thing to go in the current account and see what are the other opportunities. Can you maybe tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah. So we're typically entering into organizations working with one group or department.
Hmm.
And and if we're delivering good work there, we should be reaching out to other groups or departments within that organization, um, to reference that work. And that's the lowest hanging fruit, right? Is, hey, I'm working with X, Y, and Z over here. We're doing this kind of work, which I think might be valuable for you in X, Y, and Z reasons. Can we have a discussion around that? And I think that getting better about just landing and expanding in these organizations is a huge opportunity. So having the information to go and say, find contact information of folks across the industry or across the organization, that's important to us.
Hmm.
And then also, Salesforce is still, we're a channel driven business. That's a customer of ours. Going into Salesforce contact information and making sure that we have the right people, the right information. If we don't have phone numbers and emails to go out and reach somebody, we want to go find those.
Hmm.
So that's like the baseline. And then within ZoomInfo, there's just a lot of other capabilities that we're just dipping into
Hmm.
around technology attributes to see, what kind of technology people are using within their stack. There's live news feeds of updates from organizations if there's an acquisition or someone received funding or something like that. So we can use that information to go and maybe pivot messaging to someone.
Hmm.
So so far the way that we're using it is extremely valuable. I think it'll become more valuable the more we
Hmm.
get into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think intent data is something super interesting. And one thing I've seen is, for me, I use a lot, I call that digital footprint. So on LinkedIn, I use a lot of what prospects are leaving there as a footprint, and often it's way bigger than we think it is. And as you said, there's a thing called similar tech, I think, is you can actually, let's say, put SalesLoft, for example. For me, when a company installs SalesLoft, basically, it means they are ramping up in outbound. They need training for SDRs. So I know exactly, if you just signed up for SalesLoft within 3 months, you're exactly my perfect customer. That's the right trigger. So I think that, having this access to data is super important right now, because the most of the kind of like outbound channels are super flooded, and it's always, like I receive tons of terribly crappy messaging for, like outbound messages. And using this trigger and showing that you've done your homework, I think is super important. And I think that I've never used ZoomInfo as such, but from what I understand, you can see these kind of things, right?
Yeah. So they have, yeah. So we get, they actually just acquired a new company, which they're folding into the platform here in Q4,
Hmm.
which will actually give you real-time search functionality. So if
Nice.
I'm following an organization and they're searching, sales engagement or sales loft or outreach, I can get that real-time feed that says, hey, this organization just researched this, or, this organization just searched Salesforce. Like that stuff to me is incredibly valuable. And if it would be even more valuable if I was running a fast-paced inside sales shop, right? Like I want to be able to jump on that opportunity.
Hmm.
And I think you make a really good point. I think tailoring messaging is extremely key. I think the days of the shotgun approach to emails and not being really personal in that messaging is killing it. It's killing people because it's competitive, right? We
Hmm.
like that's a differentiator, and that's why we use some of these news and scoops and things like you are, because if I can speak intelligently to your industry and I can say that this is where it's going, here's what people are investing in, here's the outcome that those investments are
Hmm.
driving, and you should be thinking about this stuff too. Like that's insightful. That's the stuff that I want to chew on. And I'm like you, I get messages all day about people offering services, and if it's not personalized, I'm not engaging it.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it's a lot simpler to be personalized than we think. For example, for me, I have a thing I always say is, whenever, like, one of the best places to find leads that are hot and qualified is at your competitors' content. So you can do the exercise next time. I don't know if you're on G2. Are you on G2, or you have a G2 page
I
or
think so.
770? Yeah.
I think
Go
so.
on G2, go check the G2 grid, check your favorite competitor. Basically, you find someone on LinkedIn that posts regularly, like CEO, whatever, and then if they post about the problems of your customers or their customers, then you're going to be able to have people who like and comment who will often fall into the ICP. And so for me, what I do is I always take a screen. I explain that into a video basically, and the answer rate I get from that are crazy because it's super simple to find this way. Say, hey, I saw you've actually liked the post of XYZ about this, and then it shows that you've done some research, and you can scale that very easily. So often people are afraid of putting in the work because they think that if they spend 10, I don't know, like 5 minutes, because it's really 5 minutes per prospect, they will actually have to work way too much. But the quality you get and the answer rate you will get by just taking a bit of that are,
Yeah.
simply amazing. Yeah.
Well, I think it's that philosophy of like just kind of throw spaghetti at the wall and see if anything sticks. When you personalize stuff, it's more like you're throwing darts than you are spaghetti.
Yeah.
And I want to throw darts. I don't want to throw spaghetti. And I think it can feel like it takes longer at the beginning, but I think when you start to get emotion and a repetition down of where you're looking, how you're going to write your emails, how you're going to structure it, that stuff is actually fairly scalable. And again, you can send 100 batch of blast emails or 20 personalized ones, and I can almost guarantee that you're going to get a better return off of the 20 than you did the 100.
Yeah, exactly. And so I always like now asking a question to give an opportunity to my audience to go and sell something to you. So the question then, the best way to sell something to someone is to find a problem they have and solve part of all of the problem. So what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now as a VP, and how are you planning on overcoming it?
Biggest problem we face that I face right now as a VP would be I think it's keeping up with the pace that our organization wants to run. And I'm not the only stakeholder in that. We have extremely lofty revenue goals that we have to meet. So how do you hire for that? And how you got to hire fast, and you have to kind of build an airplane as you fly it, because as soon as you start to go for that kind of scale, some of your processes might break. And when your processes break, you got to re-engineer those to enable for that new growth. And then from a delivery perspective, how do we ensure that we're overselling our delivery capacity so that we can go out and hire a bunch more delivery people? And so it's just like this game of moving different pieces around consistently to ensure that we're selling a lot, we have the right people to deliver it, rinse and repeat. And that sounds simple, but when you're looking at margins of an organization and what's a healthy profit, and how do we keep money in the bank, and how do we do things smart while also reinvesting, those are hard things to do in a services organization. And I often tell people that that's the thing that I like least about working in consulting organizations is you're balancing a lot of things. We're not selling something that has a 95% profit margin on it. We're selling people, and people are not profitable. And if they are, they're really expensive. And so scaling these organizations is just, you're moving a lot of different things at the same time to ensure there's balance. And at our stage with how fast we're running, that's hard to do.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of what kind of, because it's such a mass. It's a huge problem. It's a huge challenge that has underlying challenges and problems. But if basically being able to have like a 3 months kind of forecast on what are the needs would be something good, I guess. So would you have some kind of like tool or solution you bought recently and you were like, wow, this is really something amazing for what I'm doing, like consulting that really solves a huge problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is interesting. So you mentioned SalesLoft. I come from the inside sales background where we use SalesLoft all the time and these sales engagement tools. I think traditionally, upmarket enterprise, and I'm not even going to say consulting because I think that's even harder, services, but upmarket enterprise, people have often ignored these types of tools because they think it's slower, more strategic. And one of the things that we have invested in recently, and is actually a tool through ZoomInfo, is a sales engagement platform, because I think that we can utilize these tools up market in a strategic way that is very thoughtful in how we use it. And I think that's a huge opportunity for us, because if you think about how sellers stay relevant and consistent, it's really hard to do that in a manual process. It's really hard to know today, I got an email to bot today, and then I got to call him tomorrow, and then I want to send him a LinkedIn message. Like, we can create structure and cadence at an enterprise level that's thoughtful, that can help us separate and be top of mind. And I don't think people have penetrated that yet. And I know they haven't penetrated it yet in the consulting and services world. So that, to me, is an investment that we made that I'm really excited about. And we're working through the mechanics of getting that rolled out. But that would be the tool that I am feeling like, if I was going to go all in on one thing, it would be that.
Yeah. I think it's very exciting, the sales enablement space. I'm a SalesLabs partner, and I always find it funny because it's actually what it does is very simple, and it doesn't look very complicated, and it's not like you have it and then it's like, wow, my life changes as a rep. But if you have people like that have their cadences in SalesLabs and that are able to really do that, you have this kind of leverage that comes. And if you get like just a few additional points of answer rate, that goes like crazy. And for me, what I would love to see is like, Zapier. I would like to see first like the technology and then the skills for SDRs or sales reps, where you can use, let's say, SalesLoft as your sales enablement base. You have Zapier webhooks everywhere. And if you need, let's say, to go and plug onto a podcast or plug onto different things and be able to kind of like use APIs to create your own intelligence system, I think that would be amazing, because then we would be able to really use our brains and automation the right way to actually sell more and sell like solve better problems. So for me, that's kind of the vision. I think will happen at some point. You see it with Gong and the way they integrate with everything, and so you see that Zoom also becomes a huge kind of platform that in the infrastructure. And so I think it's very exciting, all this space we have around sales enablements and the tools we have, because there's a big infrastructure that is that is being rolled out, and it's super exciting, I think.
Yeah, I think the one thing that scares me a little bit with the sales engagement platform, and I think depending on the company and how they approach it, I could be wrong, I could be right, but it's so good now that you could hire on a brand new sales rep. They come in, they put their butt in the seat, and something like a SalesLoft and Salesforce is already set up for them. Here's your cadence, here's the templates, it's already written, just follow it down. And sometimes I get a little bit nervous, because when I first started selling, we didn't have any of that, right? It was it was emails, and you pick up the phone and dial it. We didn't even have click dialing at that point. But like, are we risking getting people to build creative muscles of how they approach their outreach or their conversations by having everything so pre-scripted? Or do you see more organizations giving SDRs in this new world a little bit of autonomy to tweak their messaging? What are you seeing?
So what you're asking me what I would like, or?
Well, I'm asking you, first question would be, do you think that that's a problem or a challenge? Is that we've over automated new sales reps? And the second question is are you seeing people do that? Or are you seeing organizations that say, hey, here's everything that we've got, but go ahead and tweak it how you feel is the right way to do it?
So I have a few organizations I'm working with that are really smart, because they are putting the sales enablement as an infrastructure, and then they train their reps on this, and they let them kind of be more creative, and they get really good results. You have an organization that's called #paid in Toronto. Roger is doing that. I'm interviewing him also on the show, and he's really smart in the way he's doing that. There's a lot of organization. The problem is they go they buy SalesLoft, they buy Gong, whatever, and then they put everything like they just say, okay, we're gonna like make everything super strict, and you have no freedom in your outreach. I think it's dumb, because then don't hire an SDR, just take a robot instead, because like inputting information to get a specific output is called like it's machine learning or whatever. It's done by machines much better than humans. So if you put like someone who's a human who's going to cost you a lot of money and be like not so reliable as a machine, just use creativity, like. And for me, I think that's why I am people always ask, is sales an art or a science? For me, I think it's a craft. And so I think it's something where you have to be creative, you have to have the right tools, and you have to be given this creativity and the training. And so then, quick plug, that's exactly what I'm doing. So I train, for me, SDRs to be creatives, and to be creative and use the tools they have. So they just have a huge leverage. And if you have a good tool that allows you to basically not have to log everything, that captures everything you're doing, and you have good training and good ideas on how to, for example, like do a show like we're doing right now. This is so simple to do. Tomorrow you can go start your own show. It's going to cost you €0, and you're going to be able to interview your ICP and get some opportunities going. So I think it's great, but most people don't use it properly.
Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah, where I've used it, we've kind of set a foundation of touch points, but we've let folks write their own emails and put their own creative spin and find out what works, what doesn't. And then I've also seen organizations where it's a machine, right? The thing, everything's scripted. You pull the handle down and it starts turning, and that's it. And someone's just pushing buttons.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're managing a team that is doing outreach, your job is really to enable them, find them. That's the thing, is often that's something I find crazy, is like people say, oh, we hired, I find it very funny, is like, we hired someone from LinkedIn, so they will actually train our teams internally on how to use LinkedIn. And I'm like, great, they're going to train them on how to use SalesNav, and they're going to train them on what LinkedIn told them how to sell. But the thing is, LinkedIn is much better used in a way LinkedIn didn't think of. And so you have to find this kind of external knowledge that comes and give ideas and creativity and let people experiment. And so I think if you're managing an SDR team or an outreach team, your job is just give them the infrastructure, give them the knowledge, and gamify, like make sure they're excited to kind of go and win more points, basically. It's about that. For me, I'm selling kind of coaching, training. The learning experience is what's the most important. It's the same, I would say, whenever you're training leading a team, the kind of like work experience you're having is what's super important there. And often people just don't really see it.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, good. So before ending, because we're almost there, we have if there's any question, just like for people who are on YouTube or on Zoom, just drop them in the chat. And while we wait for people to put some questions, if they have some, can you maybe tell us more about whatever you want to pitch, or like if there's anything you want to talk about that is yeah.
What else can we talk about? I think trying to think about here. Yeah, I think one of the things that we talked a little bit about, not just from a selling perspective, but a leadership perspective in the world that we're in today, and versus the world where I came from. And I think this moving into services world has offered a very different management style than where I came from. And in that, at this level, I feel like my title VP is somewhat glorified in that, like, I run the team and I have to do all the forecasting, but I'm in the trench every day selling with my reps and doing client proposals and meetings. And it's a really fun, interactive way and hands-on way to lead. And I feel like I got that in SaaS as well. But I also feel like there's a desire in the SaaS world to get into leadership, because folks feel as though if I get into management, I get to stop selling, and I get a break from running the sales cycles. And I always just I found it. I think the reason why I've been so successful in the consulting and services world is because I've always wanted to lead in the trench. I've always wanted to get in there with my reps and coach and do all of those things. But I guess the lesson learned is that this world of services and consulting, which I highly recommend everyone should go do a couple of years over here, because I really do think that you learn a lot. If you're coming over as a leader, I feel as though you have to want to spread success. That has to be your ideology, and that I'm leading from the trench. I'm here to spread success because I value it more than my own individual success. And this world really it really exposes that. And I felt as though in SaaS, you could sometimes hide a little bit of that, in that you could probably dashboard manage pretty effectively sometimes in SaaS organizations.
Yeah, I really like what you said. Often people say, hey, I'm gonna go to management, or so I can stop selling. The thing is just change profession. If there's sales in your title, VP, whatever thing, you're gonna have to sell. That's your main your responsibility is revenues. And so so you have to go and do it yourself sometimes. And for me, I just feel like in the world in which we're living in, and in the future, if you don't own bringing value or revenue, it's going to be very hard to have a job or to do anything, because that's the thing now. If you can't provide value, you're less relevant than you were maybe 30 years before. And because you needed to use humans to deliver stuff. Now you can just like, I'm running a business. I would need like 50 people like 20 years ago. Now I'm just running it by myself. So imagine in 10 years. So I think that's the thing. Owning revenue is super important. And that's why it's super important.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges I've had most in leadership is that it isn't just about running a sales team anymore. And there is you have to come up out of that trench more often to survey the field and understand where the obstacles are. How are we going to be leading edge? What are the things that we're going to pivot? How are we going to experiment to make those changes? And that's an area that I have struggled in a lot, because I get so focused on helping people sell and coaching and getting deals done and all that that I would find myself having a hard time finding that out. And I feel like today, being in leadership requires even more of that in figuring out what are the obstacles, where are the opportunities to get my team to move a little bit better in one direction over the course of time. And I think that's just it's important today with how competitive things are and just how fast the market moves.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brett. So I think we don't have questions from the audience. Where can people, get in touch with you, get more of you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and I think my name is linked to the original post of this, but I'm sure you'll repost it on that. Happy to chat. I also work with an organization called Replays, and we do really sales performance coaching and consulting to help inside sales teams, either up market or low market, just get better with call scripting, discovery, questioning, demos, and then we also help leaders inject ideas on how they can scale their people, their process, their infrastructure. And so I'm happy to always help and chat with folks.
Okay, cool. So I dropped the links to your LinkedIn. Also, Replace it works kind of as a credit, so you can purchase credits and then you get paired with a coach, right? Or I think that's how Dave told me at the time.
It's something similar to that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So if you need coaching from someone who's in the trench, just go on Brett's profile, get in touch with him, and that's gonna be perfect. Cool. Thanks a lot, Brett. Man. That was really nice to have you, and talk soon.
Yep. See you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.